Very good evening to one and all present here. I welcome everyone to today's distinguished lecture on state-sponsored terrorism, Iran and its proxies by Mr. Noor Dahri. The topic is indeed relevant in the contemporary geopolitical discourse, especially pertaining to West Asia slash Middle East. Before starting, I would like to introduce the Department of Geopolitics and International Relations. The department was established in 2010 and offers master's and PhD programs. And as part of the master's program, a number of unique and relevant courses are being offered to the students, including India's national security and defense management, concept of war and peace in geopolitics, environment security, maritime security, arms control, and many others. And today's distinguished lecture is part of one of the courses on counterterrorism and asymmetric conflicts. And I am really excited to listen to Mr. Dari. And without much ado, I would like to invite Nadeem Ahmed Mukul, PhD scholar at the department, to introduce the speaker. Over to you, Nadeem.
Thank you, Purnima. I'll keep it as short as possible. So, Noor Dahri currently is the Executive Director of Islamic Theology of Counterterrorism. He studied forensics and criminal psychology from Oxford, UK, and counterterrorism from the University of Maryland, USA, as well as the International Institute for Counterterrorism, ICT, in Israel. Mr. Dahri is an independent researcher in counter-Islamist terrorism and Islamist extremism. He is a contributing writer for the US Homeland Security magazine. Mr. Dahri is also a member of the British Association for Islamic Studies in the UK. Mr. Dahri often writes and speaks on various issues pertinent to counterterrorism and Islamic radicalism. That also involves a wide range of areas in the geopolitics of West Asia. Noor is also an advisor at Covins India and a US-based organization called the Council for Muslims Against Anti-Semitism, CMAA. He is also an appointed as the terrorism and security expert at International Team for the Study of Security, an Italian-based organization. Noor Dahri has worked with the London Police Department from the last 7 years and received a Life Achievement Award certificate by Lord Frank Judd at the House of Lords, UK. He has recently authored and edited many books, including and currently is working on a book about the Israel Defense Forces, which is expected to be released in 2022. So that's a short introduction. I probably edited out a lot of content because of the time, but thank you for speaking to us. I will pass over to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadeem. Now I invite Dr. Nandkishore, Associate Professor and Head in charge of the Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, to give his welcome remarks.
At the outset, let me thank my dear friend Noor for having accepted this. This was supposed to happen almost a year ago. He is someone who works 7 days a week, and he says that probably there was an extra day he would have worked that day as well. And finally, he gave us some time and he could make it. He's very busy and a lot of things keep him busy. And he's been an author as well. And I have to share this, perhaps my fascination to read some of his work started off with his a single tweet called as the characteristics of Islamic radicalization and fundamentalism, where he had put up a list of things. That's when I started looking at some of them, and some of my students as well walked up to me and asked, "Sir, we came across something like this. Can you explain?" So then I spoke in the class and then explained some of those terminologies. And that's how my my introduction to him happened. And then subsequently we got connected. I'm also associated with the institution that he runs. So from that way, he's a dear friend, and we have been exchanging a lot of informations and other things of late. Apart from that, we certainly wanted, because his expertise on Iran and then its proxies, essentially on Hamas and Hezbollah, was something that we wanted him to speak. So I thought he's the better person. By then, our PhD student, Ms. Purnima, was also working on West Asia along with Mr. Nadeem, took this initiative to contact him, and then subsequently it culminated to what it is today. So I'm very happy to have him here. And the subject that he is speaking is of extreme relevance because Iran has been trying to muster, and then Hamas and Hezbollah have been very, very open about the support that they are receiving from Iran. That is something very significant that we need to recognize here. And this semester, we are teaching a course on counterterrorism and asymmetric conflict, in which there is a whole unit on state-sponsored terrorism, in which we have looked at the characteristics and many other things. And Iran stands out as a standard example to look at, apart from Pakistan and few other states. It stands out to be a very strong one, where Iran's quest is for the regional supremacy. It's not an Arab state, so it wants to gain, and it wants to show that sympathy. At the same time, it wants to push its ideology and agenda all over and see to it that it stays relevant. So this is something that they have been trying to do since 1979. They've had up and down, and they've had different ayatollahs coming in, but invariably everybody has told the same line. What has changed? What has been a significant issue that the world is going to face with? We have heard people like Professor Nalapat who have said that perhaps more than any other, the Shia militancy that comes in the form of Iran is much more dangerous to the world than anything else. This is something scholars like Professor Nalapat have spoken about. But more than any of these things, Iran's recent outrage, and then the way Hamas retaliated against Israel, and then we could see the amount of destruction they can cause. So all these things are very, very relevant, and this makes this particular topic contemporary, and it's of great interest to the students of geopolitics and international relations. I'm really glad for the initiative taken by our students. Apart from that one, for Mr. Noor Dahri for having accepted our invitation to deliver a lecture here. Thank you so much. And this is going to be only the beginning, but we are going to have many more lectures from him. We're going to have many more interactions. Thank you, Noor, for being here. And then thanks to the organizers for this opportunity. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dahri, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nindakishore, and a special thanks to the Manipur University administration for inviting me to deliver my lecture. And it's a really great honor for me. And thank you, Ponima. She was constantly in my touch for last 1.5 months, and I was trying to arrange a time to deliver my lecture to the students, but because of my busy schedule, so I really apologize. I just came quickly home, and after lecture I will back again to work. So I'll try my best. I will try my best to do a proper, that people, especially students, they can understand what I'm trying to tell. The core theme of this topic is about state-sponsored terrorism and Iran and its proxy groups. However, I will put a little bit light on Islamist extremism, terrorism, what terrorism is, what type of terrorisms are operating in the world. Because audience here, their topic is proxy group and their international relations, geopolitics, and definitely geopolitics is terrorism and extremism very much involved in it. So the topic about root causes of Islamist extremism is very broad, very deep, and very wide, and cannot be covered in one lecture. Right, might be in few lecture you can understand the basic things, but I will try to minimize things. Before we understand the terrorism, we need to understand the definition of terrorism, then the definition of religious terrorism, and in the last is Islamist terrorism. Because as you are students of terrorism and the subject, and you have come across a very famous sentence that one person's terrorism, other person's freedom fighter. And sometimes people are very much confused. They say, no, they are freedom fighters. And other people say, no, they are terrorists. You have to look at these things according to the definitions. Unfortunately, in the world now, there are more than 109 definitions of exercising, and none of the definitions match each other. This is why there's a confusion arises. However, the basic definition which every person or every country or department, whether it's an Indian intelligence department or is a Pakistan or is a US or UK, they are agree with that definition, which I follow the definition provided by the for a Professor Boaz Ginor from Israeli Institute. That terrorism is actually, look at the definition, that terrorism is actually a form of violence. It's a form of violent struggle in which violence is deliberately used against the civilians in order to achieve political goals. Now, these political goals could be nationalistic, could be socio-economic, ideological, or religious, etc., etc. Now, the word is against the civilians. Now, the two narratives you hear, if you understand, one is targeted civilians population. Why? To achieve political goals. Now, depend on the organization. Some organizations have a nationalistic goal to achieve. To they deliberately target civilian population to achieve a nationalistic goal. Now it depends on the country. India have a different domain of terrorism. Pakistan have a different domain of terrorism. In Europe or in the Middle East have a different, every country have a different culture of terrorism as well as the culture of counterterrorism. Now, sometimes people think, like for example, Hamas. Now, recent wave of terrorism attacks into Israel from Hamas, they fired nearly 5,000 rockets. And at the end, Israel retaliated with full force. So the sympathy for Hamas arise all around the world in a Muslim community. And they think they are fighting for their land. They are fighting for their people. They are fighting for their right. They are fighting for the just cause. Same like when we think about Hezbollah in Lebanon, people think they are the freedom fighters. They are the guerrillas. So mostly majority of Muslims, they don't consider these organizations as terrorist organizations. For example, LET. LET is obviously a terrorist organization declared not only by the India but the international community, is European Union as well as US. But in Pakistan, they consider them as a freedom fighter, jihadist, mujahideen. They fight for the Kashmir. Exactly same people have something without any knowledge. They have something wrong perception in their mind about the organizations because they have absolutely no idea about the definitions of terrorism. Now, if they think they are freedom fighters, then there is definition of freedom fighters. We can't call someone suddenly freedom fighter or guerrillas because we like them. No, the guerrillas is they attack our military installations as well as government infrastructure to achieve a political goals, not civilians. People need to understand those organizations who are attacking deliberately, intentionally on the civilian population. You cannot call them guerrillas or freedom fighters whatsoever because their target is innocent, unarmed civilians. Those organizations, they attack only their domain of war is to hurt military installations, target government infrastructure only. These people are not classified, these groups are never be classified as a terrorist organization. However, some terrorist organizations, they use both tactics, terrorism as well as guerrilla warfare. So we have to assess every act of the organizations, whether it is classified as a terrorist activity or guerrilla warfare. For example, I give you example just as a random examples. For example, LET, they in Kashmir, they attack Indian army checkpost and they killed Indian armies, or they abducted, kidnapped Indian soldiers. Now, how would the state see that? Or how the people would see that? Would that be act of terrorism or an act of guerrilla warfare? Actually, is an act of guerrilla warfare, not terrorism. However, the group or organization who conducted this act is no doubt is a terrorist organization. But the specific event, a specific target, a specific attack happened. That's we cannot call as a terrorist act. We call as a guerrilla warfare because their target is not a civilian population. I give you another example. 2005, Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit was kidnapped, abducted by the Hamas terrorists. He spent in their prison, in their captivity, more than 5 years. So in exchange with Gilad Shalit, the state of Israel released 1,000 terrorists from the prisons. Now we have to see this act, whether this act comes under the terrorism or this act come under the guerrilla warfare. Actually, it was under the guerrilla warfare committed by Hamas as a terrorist organization. So people need to understand every single incident of terrorism happened in the world. We have to see very carefully, we have to see very deeply, and we have to assess whether this act is terrorism act, mass murder, mass shooting, or guerrilla warfare. Then we have to classify it. What actually is that and committed about what? Now, guerrilla warfare, people need to understand what guerrilla warfare is. Guerrilla warfare is a numerically large group of armed individuals who operate as a military unit. Actually, they are not a military, but they act as a military unit, as a private militia, as a private military unit, attack enemy military forces and seize and hold territory, even if could be for hours only, daylight. For someone attack today and on army checkpoints, conquer the area, control the territory, even for 5 hours. And then the army came again and they really get released. So the act, it comes as guerrilla warfare, while also exercising some form of sovereignty or control over defined geographical area and its population. Like ISIS, for 5-6 years, they controlled the Iraq and Syria's area with population equivalent to the United Kingdom. But there was a terrorist organizations. There was a terrorist organization, but their act to control is come to under guerrilla warfare as well as a terrorism. Now, if you look at the state-sponsored terrorism, which is a core model or theme of this this topic, state is sponsored terrorism. Now, big organization like Hamas, Hezbollah, LET, these organizations is not small organizations. These organizations are heavily, hugely powerful, not only in the manpower as well as military-wise, trained, and the area they control it. But these organizations cannot be sustained, cannot be run without support of a state. Now, definition of state-sponsored terrorism is a state can sponsor terrorism covertly, allowing it to deny its role as an aggressor and avoid retaliation. The relationship between the patron state and the terrorist organization can be mutually beneficial. Terrorists obtain the sponsorship, including finance, necessary to maintain and expand their struggle, and the state obtain potent weapons against its enemies through these organizations. So state provide them all type of support. Like LET is run by Pakistan. Hamas is run by Qatar as well as Iran. Hezbollah is fully, completely controlled and run by the Iran. Now there are two types of terrorism. One terrorism happens internally in the country, which is called domestic terrorism. One is international terrorism. International terrorism is like a terrorism refers to a terrorism that goes beyond national boundaries in terms of methods used, the people that are targeted, or the places from which the terrorists operate. Recent incident, Mumbai, 2008, or 5/5, London bombing, 9/11, Madrid, Bali, or ongoing terrorism activities in the state of Israel. These called international terrorism because they are supported, operate, financed, trained by cross-border countries or the organizations. Now, if you look at the Iran has a very big and huge influence in the Middle East, in the region. What is a core principle to achieve? Ideology. There's main goal is Iran is to ideologically control the region, because there are two blocks in the Middle East. You students need to understand Middle East politics. There are Middle East politics is not started in 19th century. It's fueled in 19th century, but it started from 14th century after the Islam, because there were two blocks, Sunni bloc and Shia bloc. There was a caliphates, Shia caliphates in early pre-Islam and Sunni caliphates. And if you look at the Islamic history, there was the fightings, wars on and on for centuries, for achieve two goals: control the territory, power of caliphates, as well as ideological goal, which is a religiously motivated. Now, some people like nationalistic. Now, nationalistic people have no any religious goal. They are nationalists. They could be atheist. They could be Marxist, nationalist. They have nothing to do any benefit. They have no any benefit after the death. No hereafter. They all benefit are worldly to achieve the land, to achieve the goals, which is to get the land back, or survive their identity or ethnicity. However, the religiously motivated terrorism, they have definitely a religious motivation. They have definitely have a religious goal, not in the world, but hereafter. Look at the martyrdom, the suicide bombings, martyrs. They blow themselves up. They are not going to get any world benefits, but they have after the life benefits, 72 virgins plus so many benefits. Now, religiously motivated terrorism. What religiously motivated terrorism? Religiously motivated terrorism is a type of religious violence where terrorism is used as a tactic to achieve religious goals, or which are influenced by religious identity. For example, every time Islamists kill innocent people, particularly if they are Muslims, terrorist groups attempt to legitimize its actions by invoking the name of Allah, the name of God. Whenever you heard the Islamists have attacked, they are the first action before they attacking, before they killing someone, before they achieve their target or goal. The first things come out of their mouth is Allahu Akbar. God is great. This ideology makes satisfy, number one, to them that they are, whatever they are doing, they are pleasing the God by killing innocent. by killing not only non-Muslims, they're killing by Muslims as well. Because think about this. Muslims, those Muslims who are not affiliated with these Islamist organizations, or they are not ideologically connected or linked with Islamist organizations, groups, or Islamic terrorism, their ideology. So for them, these Muslims are taghut in Arabic word. Means they are legitimate to target as well as the non-Muslims. Because they think that those liberal Muslims, those secular Muslims, or even the religious Muslims, but their ideology is a peaceful, their ideology is not to enforce or not to implement the Sharia in the world or in a specific area of the country. Those Muslims are as well as infidels for them, and they are as well as a target like infidels they call or non-Muslims. Now, people need to understand there's Iran. Before the Iran, if you look at the Iran before 1979, the Iran was a completely different. It's very modern, very secular. But the Iran after the Islamic revolution, the Iran has become completely hostile under the one mullah regime. They are the extremists. Their goal is not to let the people live in the peace, not only in the Middle East, but across the world. Their ideology is based on the religious ideology. Now, if you look at how enemy they are hateful against the state of Israel. But this was the second country in the world after the creation of state of Israel in 1948. When the state of Israel founded, two countries in the world, in the Muslim world, they accepted Israel. Number one, Turkey. They accepted Israel as a legitimate and legal country. Second country in 1952 was Iran. Can you believe it? Iran was the second country in the Muslim world, in the Muslim Ummah, that recognized Israel as a sovereign country of the Jewish land. Israel as a legitimate country. Iran, under the Raza Shah Pahlavi, the king of the Iran. Then it's on and on until the 1977, when religiously motivated Islamist under the leadership of Imam Ayatollah Khamenei, he was hostile and he was exiled in France. So these mullah came into power, they created a chaos. Then they had a war, 10 years, a long war with Iraq. And after that, they created so many organizations in the Middle East, in the region. Now, if you look at their organizations, main organization, will people know it? Hezbollah, Al-Quds Force. Now, many people might be there unaware of Al-Quds Force. What Al-Quds? Al-Quds is Jerusalem, is called Al-Aqsa. So Al-Quds Force is a force of Al-Aqsa, force of Jerusalem. This is the name of Al-Quds Force. Al-Quds Force is not an ordinary organization. It's a very influential organization, not in the Middle East, but all around the world. From Asia to Middle East, from Middle East to Europe, from Europe to US, especially South American states. Al-Quds is an organization which is a mother umbrella of all hundreds of organizations. Terrorist organizations exist. Shia terrorist organizations exist in the Middle East. Somehow they have provided support to Hamas, which is not a Shia organization, but Sunni Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is a Palestinian branch of Muslim Brotherhood, Ikhwan al-Muslimin of Egypt. But Iran support them. Iran train their militants. Iran provide finance. Iran provides military training and arms in order to destabilize the state of Israel. Now, the organization is a purely Sunni organization, but Iran, through Sunni organization, Iran want to achieve a goal. Now, second example is Al-Qaeda. Now, people think Al-Qaeda is anti-Shia organization. Yes, they have blown up so many Shia shrines. They have killed so many Shia people in the Middle East. But Iran somehow support Al-Qaeda. There are no present evidences. The evidence is recently Israel killed through their intelligence assassinations by the intelligence agency by the Israel. They have assassinated some Al-Qaeda leaders. They were living peacefully in exile in Iran. So in the case, you need to understand that Iran has playing two goals. One, to achieve through the Shia militants, their ideology. Second, through the Sunni, because they know it that Al-Qaeda is an Islamist organization, and Islamist organizations are always against Muslims, against Arab regimes, against the Muslim countries. So they use them. Second, Daesh, ISIS. ISIS is anti-Iran, purely anti-Iran, purely anti-Shia. They genocided in Iraq and Syria, Yazidis and Shia population. However, I had a meeting 4 or 5 years ago with a Prime Minister of Israel's advisor in London. And when we talk about Daesh, that time ISIS was very active on the peak in the peak. So he provided one of the intelligence, and he said that in some part of Middle East, ISIS is supported by the Iran. And that time I was shocked. I said, how comes? They say Iran want to achieve the goal. So whoever fits in their goal to use that, they use it. So the information is not, you can't find most of the information in the media. But these information are when we have meetings, when we have briefings in IDF or some intelligence department, you hear these things. Like some information I received from Israeli IDF briefings when I attended their lecture organizations. I provided deliver my lectures. So there was briefings. We attended briefings, and that briefings about something different I heard and I listened about Hamas, which you can't see or can't hear in the media. Now, Iran has organizations, hundreds of organizations across the Middle East. So because their target is a Middle East. Hundreds of organizations. And these organizations is run by IRGC. IRGC is a military of Iran, Iranian army, like we call Pakistan Army, Indian Army, IDF, Israeli Defense Force, or UK's, my country's army is Royal Army. So the Iran's army called IRGC. IRGC, their goal is already mentioned in their IRGC word. We can't say it's Islamic Republic Guard Corps. No. The organization is Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Now, revolution, this is what they are best. Now, if you look at the Islamist, Al-Qaeda, which influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood, Sayyid Qutb, or you can say Hizb Tahrir, or you can see Hamas, Hezbollah, they all believe in revolutionist ideology. They want to create a chaos in the world. They want to overthrow elected governments, democratic governments, specifically Muslim governments, to implement their so-called Sharia laws through revolution, which is called in Arabic word khuruj. Khuruj is a word which is in Islam is a prohibited. Can you believe it? In Islam, by the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, khuruj is forbidden. Revolution against the elected governments is forbidden in Islam. But because of the political Islam is influenced now in the world, people believe in revolution. Every second Muslims in the world, if he follow the religion, he is influenced by the political Islam. When I say these things, most of the Muslims, they don't disagree with me. They always keep a distance from me because they don't want to listen a reality, the facts. That the political Islam, which is consists of very tiny bunch of Muslims, extremists, we can say 0.9%. These extremists hijack the core principle of Islam. We believe Muslims that Islam is a religion of peace. Can you see the peace around the world? No. Why? Why is a difference? Difference is ideology. The revolutionist ideology. Revolution. Whether Hizb ut-Tahrir, they want to create a revolution in the world for Islamic Caliphate. Muslim Brotherhood, they want to establish Sharia laws in the world, specifically in the Middle East, through Khuruj revolution. Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, IRGC. Khomeini's revolution, it was a revolution which the world called first Islamic revolution. It's not Islamic, it's Islamist revolution, not Islamic revolution. Islamic word always can be used in a positive way. Islamist can be used in a negative way. If you look at the statements of European leaders or European governments, whenever they make any amendments, any laws, or they introduce any new strategies to counter the religiously motivated terrorism, they never use the word Islamic. They use the word Islamist because they know the difference of Muslim and Islamist. Islamic and Islamist terminology. Islam and Islamism. Islam and political Islam. These are completely different dimensions, different narratives of one goal, different ideologies. Iran has influence. If you look at that, if you Google it, Iran Shia crescent, okay? In the middle, you will see the crescent. Crescent is a moon. Moon comes all round, but crescent comes half moon, crescent. Now, if you look at the crescent, they started from on the top to the bottom to Yemen. These are the countries surrounding Saudi Arabia. That's a crescent. Is called Shia crescent because they say a specific country: Bahrain, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, UAE. You can see the countries, what the population of Shia population in those countries. But I don't see as a Shia crescent. I see is an Iranian crescent because Iran used these countries, destabilize these countries through their proxy groups. Now the mother of these proxy groups is IRGC, Iranian military. They created when the Khomeini he came into power 1979 around. He created Basij, BASIJ. Basij is a domestic organization, a very powerful organization. Like we can say in UK we have MI6, MI5. MI6 is the external intelligence. MI6 is the external intelligence, our country, and MI5 is a domestic. Now, Basij is a kind of domestic organizations, comes directly under the Ayatollah Khamenei, like IRGC. Now, Basij's goal is to provide a manpower to the IRGC. They recruit youngsters to provide as a manpower to IRGC. Then IRGC decides. Now, these manpower where to use. 5,000 they use might be in Lebanon. 10,000 they can use in Syria. 20,000 they can use in Iraq. This is there's other activities of Basij as well, creating intelligence, finding out the internal threats. However, the main goal to support and sustain IRGC by providing the manpower. Second, I already mentioned Al-Quds forces. Al-Quds force is a mother umbrella of terrorist, Shia terrorist organizations in the Middle East. They provide funds, they provide training, military equipment, arms, as well as manpower to the organizations. Shia, most specifically Shia organization, but somehow Sunni organizations such as Hamas. Hamas get all military training, funds, and logistic support, everything from Al-Quds. Soleimani was killed. Soleimani was a head. Now is Ismail Qani. He is the head of Al-Quds forces. Al-Quds forces has recruited thousands of people from Pakistan and created an organization which called Zainabiyun. And they recruited thousands of people from Afghanistan. And they created, and the name of the organization is Fatimiyun. Limai Zainabiyun, Limai Fatimiyun, Limai Imamiyun. If you look at the Iraq and Syria, you can find hundreds organizations, sub-organizations, subgroups, units, brigades, Unit 21, Unit 29, Brigade number 1, Brigade number 3, Brigade number 4. These are the names of the different organizations with different roles and with different objectives and different targets. And obviously Hezbollah obviously is a very powerful organization. I don't call it an organization. I call it a military. Hezbollah is itself a military, it's not organization. It was organized when it was created. Now it's become a very powerful. It become a very, very deep and even not in a terrorist activities, but as well as a guerrilla warfare, as well as a political activities. If you look at the Lebanon's parliament, you see several members of parliament, even the ministers, they belong to Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is a military, is a private militia, is a private military of Iran, supported by Al-Quds forces. Now, each organization has created a massive network in the Middle East and across the world. Like Syria, if you look at Syria's Hezbollah created its Hezbollah type organization. It's called National Defense Forces. Now, National Defense NDF. National Defense Forces have nearly 150 units, where nearly 100,000 trained members fight in Syria. Plus, they have a different organization work under the NDF and other powerful organizations. In Iraq, IRGC founded a powerful militia group, which very powerful in the Middle East. After Al-Quds force, the organization is very powerful, specifically in Iraq. It called PMU, Popular Mobilization Unit, which is now, after the defeat of Daesh, because the organization was created to defeat Daesh. Now, after the defeat of Daesh, the organization is become now part of the Iraqi army. Can you believe it? It's look like you hear one day then LET is become a part of Pakistan army now, officially. Or Hezbollah is become a part of Lebanese armies. Or Al-Qaeda has become a part of any Muslim armies. So these popular mobilization unit, PMU, is now is a part of Iraqi army. Now it has more than 100,000 trained members by 2018. Now, in 2018 Iraqi elections, PMU affiliated groups or parties, they won more than 100 seats in Iraqi parliament. Can you believe it? The organization, which was a terrorist organization created by the Hezbollah, by the IRGC in Iraq against Daesh and other Sunni terrorist organizations, fighters. They joined Iraqi military, then their affiliated groups they created, and they formed the parties, political parties, and they won the election, and they won nearly more than 100 seats in Iraqi parliament. Like Hamas have their own country, Gaza is their own territory. You can say territory, you can say area, you can country, you can say their state, their own state. They rule in the state. They have their own minister. They're the Prime Minister Ismail Haniya. They have a defense minister. They have a finance minister. They own that. Now these organizations, the Hezbollah have their own parliamentarian members in Lebanese parliament. Now these groups, these organizations sustain long. Why? Because these called hybrid terrorist organizations. Hybrid terrorist organization. Now the small organization they call skeleton terrorist organizations. Now these hybrid terrorist organizations, the hybrid terrorist organization are the subsume 2 and some 3 components. They have a military terrorist wing, they have a political wing, and they have a wing devoted to the social welfare services. Now all 3 wings are directly or indirectly subject to the organization's leadership and operate according to their policies in the region. Now three wings: militant wing, political wing, and social wing. Like Hezbollah have a militant wing. Hezbollah have a military wing which called Hezbollah. They have a political wing which run in the Lebanon, and they have a social wing to create social work, to conduct a social work, to create charity, donations. They provide in Lebanon millions funds to the people to gain sympathy of the population. LET, Lashkar Taiba, it was before Jamaat Dawa. When I was in 90s, it was Jamaat Dawa. Then it's become a, when I joined 90, it was Markaz Dawa wal Irshad, and LET was their military wing. Then it's become a, they disband, and then it's become a Jamaat Dawa. And the organization I can call is a hybrid terrorist organization, because they have a militant wing, yes. They have a social wing, yes. They have a political wing, no. Yet last year or year before, they announced Milli Islami Party or something like that, and they run the election. But however, before that they win election, it was disbanded by the election commission, by the pressure of US and other European countries. But why I call them hybrid terrorist organization, though they don't have a political wing? Yes, they don't have a political wing. They have voting powers. They have a vote bank. If today election commission of Pakistan allow Jamaat Dawa to run their political party in Pakistan, their vote bank is still saved and sustained. They have a 1 million trained militants. 1 million trained militants. I'm not talking about non-trained militants. I'm talking trained militants. Okay, I don't want to divert my topic from Iran to the Pakistan. So I'm seeing, okay, let me bring a little bit short. So these organizations in Iraq, they have a different organizations under work under the Iran. Kataib al-Hizbullah is very powerful. Badr organizations, very powerful. Kataib Imam Ali, recently founded in, I think, 2017 or 18. Now, if you look at the PMU, Popular Mobilization Unit budget, in 2018, their budget was 1.5 billion. And how many personnel was salaried by the PMU, work in the PMU full-time under the salary? 122,000. This is a PMU. Full-time, part-time, more. Volunteers, different, separate. Now, if you come to Yemen, everyone knows Iran is providing military support, manpower to Houthis militias. There are around 100,000 Houthis militias, militants in Yemen. And their yearly budget is approximately $1.6 billion. And of them, most of the finance comes from telecom sector in Yemen. Telecom sector, they provide $159 million to the Houthis. Yet they get 30 million per month from the taxes on goods enter through the port of Hodeidah. Any goods come from national or internationally to the port of Hodeidah, which is controlled by Houthis. They, through the taxes of goods, they get $30 million per month. And Iran's Hezbollah, they provide their military service, logistic, manpower, training, technical assistance, etc., etc. So these organizations are run and sustained by Iran. There are many other organizations. Many other organizations. If you have a look at, if you research, you will be tired to see their network. Now, if you look at the Hezbollah's network is not in the Middle East only. Hezbollah's network, a very strong network you will find in South American countries, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina. Hezbollah have a links from European drug cartel network to the South America, as well as they have assassination units in Iranian embassies across Europe. They target to kidnap diplomats, kill diplomats, or their Iranian opponents, opposition leaders. They kill them, assassinate them, as well as the people who support free Iranian movements. They assassinate them. So these units, they work in Iranian embassies under Hezbollah or Al-Quds forces. Al-Badr organization in Iraq, they have a more than 63 active members, 63,000 active members. 22,000 they have reserve members. Malaysia's Iran created to achieve the goal, which is what? Now the question is, why Iran want these organizations? Their people are dying in hunger, poverty, unemployment, no proper education, no health service. But their regime is very powerful. They have a billions of billions dollars to invest on these organizations. What is their goal? Their goal is to overthrow elected governments, create a Shia militancy ideology in force in the Middle East. They want a Sharia law based on their Imamiya, fiqh of Imamiya, as well as a political power. They don't care any civilians. They have involvement in the drugs. They have involvement in the mafias. They have involvement in criminal activities. They have involvement in terrorist activities. Any type of crimes happening in Europe, in South American countries, in the Middle East, you will find somehow Iranian involvement. Pakistan terrorist bombings, suicide bombing, terror bombings. Not only Al-Qaeda, not only Daesh did it, not only Taliban did it, but some Iranian militias involved as well. They are arrested, but they don't declare. They don't declare because they are a little bit scared of the Iranian revolutionists, because they are very influenced. Why? Because after Iran, the most of the population of Shia population you will find in Pakistan, then Iraq. So, ladies and gentlemen, there was a short introduction about Iran's proxy groups, how they sponsor, how much they sponsor, what type of. I didn't even put more light on their military assistant. Hezbollah, look at Hezbollah military assistant capability. It's a proper army. They have 100,000 missiles, Skid missiles, rockets, drones, mines, anti-tank missiles. Look at the Houthis. Can you believe it? When the Houthis arises, they were only a couple of thousands. They have only few military logistics, and now they are capable to fight KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They damage KSA financially because of their UAV, their drones, their missiles. They use a sophisticated rockets, missiles against Saudi Arabian cities. Who provide them? Iran, Hezbollah, Al-Quds forces. So, ladies and gentlemen, might be next session I will put more light on their military expenses, military capability of these Iranian militias in the region, and more I will light on their prime role, very active role in European countries. They have a very big influence in European countries, in the cities of European, in the street of Europe. You will be shocked when you see their manpower in the street of European countries. I think it's enough in a short amount of time. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dahri. Thank you for opening new avenues of for approaching this very concept of state-sponsored terrorism and the role Iran has been playing in spreading terrorism and supporting terrorist entities in the Middle East. So with that, I think we can open the floor for questions. We can probably take it in batches so that Mr. Dahri can answer it. We can, okay, so we'll first start with Gargi. Gargi, do you want to go?
Those of you who have questions, please do raise your hand. Those of you who don't want to directly ask, you can also text. Ms. Purnima will ask those questions to Noor. Noor, I think it was perhaps one of the best so far. I think brilliant insights, and we would love to have you again and again. Let's go to the questions without wasting much time. Apparently, Noor is not keeping that well since last night. Just imagine if he was in his best condition, how things would have been. Thank you for taking such care and then prioritizing the talk to the department, Noor. Yes, Gargi.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Professor. That was a very enlightening presentation. My question is, can you explain that if Sayyid Qutb was a revolutionist and not exactly a terrorist, then what made his followers like Osama bin Laden to create something like Al Qaeda? This is in reference to the 2018 article that you posted on ITCT website.
Thank you very much. I don't know what was the name. Thank you very much, young lady, for asking these questions. Sayyid Qutb. Sayyid Qutb have a different eras. He has a one era was as a general author, secure type of person. Second phase, he was a theologist, Islamic theologist. Last part of his, till his death, was a revolutionist. As I explained in my lecture, that revolution is a khuruj, is a is a prime tool that has organization use against civilian population, against countries, states, to achieve their political goal, whether it's a religiously or politically. Qutb's, if you read the Qutb's writings, you might not find directly to terrorisms, to directly to which they incite the terrorism. However, the revolutionist ideology itself create a chaos in the states, because his goal was to overthrow elected governments. How? The number one question: how would you overthrow the elected governments? They have an army, they have a manpower, they have a military, they have an establishment. There's a country, a state. How can you fight a state? With what? With dawah? What do you think? I mean, the Sayyid Qutb he was believe only in dawah activities? No. He was he believed in a khuruj. He believed in a revolution. A revolution always is armed struggle. It's never be dawah. Dawah is propagation. Just use a mouth. This is how the ideology created. Yes, first starting is dawah, ideology, create a mindset, indoctrinate people. This is what he did. But his last phase of the life, it was a militant phase. Though he never attended any militant movement because he didn't have a time. And that time he was not even the belief in committing terrorism, to killing the innocent people. Do you understand that? His revolution ideology was against states, not against the people. When he was hanged by the Egyptian authorities, his brother Muhammad Qutb, now remember these names. People are mixing. They think, okay, Qutb is a one. There, Qutb is a two. Sayyid Qutb and Muhammad Qutb. Sayyid Qutb provided a revolutionist ideology. Muhammad Qutb, who migrated in fear of Egyptian persecution after the hanged of his brother, he migrated to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where he was a professor in I think Riyadh University or Jeddah University. He was a professor. There he created ideology which people who followed committed act of terrorism. Two famous students of Muhammad Qutb. One is Abdul Azam, and second was Osama bin Laden. I'm talking about before Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda, when created, Abdul Azam was already assassinated. Only remained Osama bin Laden, which he created Al Qaeda. These two figures were directly influenced by Muhammad Qutb. Third person was influential person in Al Qaeda was Ayman al-Azhari. Dr. Ayman al-Azhari, he was Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, influencer of Sayyid Qutb's revolution ideology and Muhammad Qutb's terrorist ideology. So these people were influenced. So actually, if you look at back, the revolutionary ideology will come from Muhammad Qutb, which he was following Maulana Maududi of Pakistan, as well as Hassan al-Banna, who actually created Ikhwan al-Muslimin. So there are different phases of Sayyid Qutb and his ideology, which changed from revolutionist, from revolution against a state to the Islamist terrorism against a state as well as the civilian population by Muhammad Qutb. I hope to answer the question.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you so much.
Can we take 2 questions as a set, and then can you respond to that together? Yeah, we'll take it in sets. Kiran, can you go ahead?
Good evening, sir. Thanks for that insightful lecture within a short span of time. My question is like, Iran had come up with a policy known as resistive economy, which was proposed by Ayatollah Khomeini. So has that been successful? And if I may say so, this countermeasure against the economic sanctions which was imposed to Iran, how has this affected the regional economy in the Middle East?
Can we also take one other question? Aditya?
Yes. I'm audible?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you for the introduction. Sir, I will ask you a very basic question, but I considered it like it should be very clear to mainstream. I'm excited to know your opinion on what exactly jihad is. Is it about what Osama bin Laden was doing? Or is it about, is it activity to sleep with 72 virgins? Or it is a fight against own evil? What exactly jihad means? Also, is there any particular in teachings of Islam which motivates them to do so? Also, do you think that Islam as a religion is being hijacked and now it is no more a religion, but it is more like a political ideology?
Thank you very much, guys. I first answer my Kiran's question. Kiran, the sections which were implemented on Iran for years, for decades, they have definitely weakened the Iran's capability. But if mostly it will affect the Iranian economy, Iranian population, Iranian sectors, they affect it. However, the regional implications were very less, because these organizations which are sustained in the Middle East, these organizations have their own frame of generating network. As I said previously in my lecture, these organizations have a links with smuggling, with drug cartels, with criminal activities. They don't fully rely on Iranian money. They rely on their regional finance, regional capability to create or generate finance, kidnapping, assassination, drugs, criminal activities, smuggling. These are the activities, these are the financial tools these terrorist organizations use in the region to generate the finance to run their organizations. Iran, when Iran was a deal with Obama's deal in Iran, they released billions of pounds, seized Iranian money, billions of pounds released Iran. The Iran used that money into they should have to, these financial flow was released to help Iranian population, to Iranian people. But instead, the Khamenei regime, they spend the money into the welfare of Iranian population. They used these funds, billions of dollars released by the US, to mobilize groups in the Middle East, to bring them from a weaker point to the very powerful level. So yes, these money sanctions, unfortunately, their effects in the Iranian population, and they are suffering. Not a regime. Regime is very powerful. Now they show it. Imams, Shia imams, Iranian harmonize. The Majlis Shura, the people, they show them they are very simple people. They're living in a 2-bedroom house, 2 rooms, and their way of life is very simple. Actually, not. They possess billions of money and finance. They have a corruption in departments. They have shares in every national, international firms in Iran. Hiddenly, they take shares to make their regime powerful. Iran as a country is a weakened population, weakened as a regime is very powerful. I hope the question answer the question. Aditya.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, is it true that, as I mentioned, 0.9% or 0.5% Islamists, they hold Islamist ideology? Most of the people, they don't. For example, in India, millions people are living Muslims in India, but you will find only tiny bunch of terrorists, not the whole population. There's two reasons, but there's a bunch of people, they are very powerful. If the person is very peaceful religion, no one bother it. If it's extremist, people see it, because he has brought something new and something different into the religion, into the world, under the name of Islam. Jihad does not mean in Islam. Let's talk about Islam. Jihad is the Arabic word, comes from jihad, which is a struggle. A struggle in what? A struggle in killing the people? No. A struggle in your religion. A struggle in a peace. A struggle in your social life. Now there is another word in the Quran, is qital. Qital means killing. Which word come from qatal? Qatal means to kill. Qital means killing. Now this qital you will find in the Quran. Qital means killing. Now if you look at the Arabic grammar, one word have 10 meanings. One word has 10 meanings. Now it depends which Islamists use the word where. This is how they manipulate the Islamic texts. Qital means killing. How? Where? When? Killing in a defense. Who use these killings? Armies, states. In a war, a state come into defensive position, and in defensive position they strike back. So these strike back comes in a qital. Now killing indiscriminately against anyone, against civilians, this word comes muqatila. Muqatila means indiscriminately you kill the people. No defensive, offensive killings, which now they're using Islamist offensive killings. Now the word is a muqatila. Never you will never find in Quran muqatila. You will find jihad, you will find qital. No muqatila. Offensive killings is not in any religion, not in Islam, not in Quran. Now these extremists, yeah, they misuse the jihad. Number one, jihad does not mean killings. Simple as that. But the word is become very infamous in the world. So everyone uses jihad. Qital, those Islamists who use Arabic, you know Arabic. So how he indoctrinated people, they use a word of qital. Wherever the qital mentioned in the Quran, they use this one and fit instead on muqatila, they use a qital and indoctrinate the youngsters. Killing, no, it's a defensive positions. It's a defensive strike, not offensive strike. Second thing is influence of Muslims. The thing is this, Muslims Those are educated, I completely understand. Those people who are general public know nothing about Islam. They only know they have to pray 5 times. They have to keep fasting. If they afford, they can go to Hajj, pilgrimage in Makkah, do charity works, do good things, daily life, busy, work in and out, family life. They don't know much about these, Islamic or religious terminologies. And they think whatever they present is Islam. I give you example. In the United Kingdom, Muslim Brotherhood affiliated organizations who came in 1960s, they established Islamic centers. Then through centers, they established charity organizations. Through charity organizations, they established mosques. Now, more than 75% of UK mosques affiliated indirectly, directly with Muslim Brotherhood. Ikhwan Muslimin. Now, Ikhwan Muslimin is a terrorist organization in a different Arab countries, an extremist organization in some of European countries, not in the UK. UK is not classified Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist or extremist, but Hamas and Hezbollah now. But now, if most of the mosques in UK are directly, indirectly created, founded, associated, affiliated, linked, networking through people with Ikhwan al-Muslimin. So if we experts, when we see these figures, we can say that these mosques or these Muslim population, millions of Muslim population in UK, the Islam is actually hijacked. Islam hijack does not mean these all Muslims are extremists. Hijack means the policies, how they run institutes, mosques, educational centers, charity organizations. This is called influence. Media, print media, electronic media. These are the influential. So these influential tools are run by organizations which some countries call extremists, other countries they don't. So in that case, I can say that majority of Islam in Pakistan, or they are influenced by the Islamist political Islamic ideology. Now, if I talk anything about in Pakistan, when I talk with the Pakistani, they straight away blame on me, oh, you are against Islam. Why? Because you're again talking about political. If they ask them what is political Islam, they have no clue what political Islam is. But they throw fatwa on me. You are kafir, you are infidel, you are taghut, you are Mossad agent, you are MI6 agent, you are RAW agent, you are this. Why? Because I talk and condemn political Islam, Islamic activities. Whether it comes in a madrasa, in a mosque, in the street, offensive, defensive, whatever they call that I'm talking against Islam. Actually, it's not. I know it Islam very well. Most of the majority, billions of Muslim, majority people living in the world, they are peaceful Muslims. But indirectly, they are being used. They don't create any offensive actions against a state or against it. But ideologically, if anything happens in India, anything happened in Kashmir, they will not see the balance. They will not see who did what. They straight away blame on India. They will not see what Kashmiri militants they do in Kashmir. Anything happens in Israel or Israel retaliate, they straight away blame on Israel. They will not see what Hamas did it, because for them, Kashmiris, Hezbollah, Hamas, they are freedom fighters, because they have absolutely no idea what definition of freedom fighter, guerrilla warfare, hybrid terrorist organization, skeleton terrorist organizations, sponsored terrorist organizations, or the terrorist organization. Terrorist was the difference between guerrilla and terrorist. They have absolutely no idea. As long as they say, oh, attack on militants, they think is actually an attack on Islam. When George Bush said that I have started a war against political Islam, when the Macron French president last month has said Islam, political Islam is under threat. So they said, oh, they started in Pakistan, everywhere they started protest against Macron. They burned their statues. Why? He talked against Islam. He didn't talk against Islam. He talked his statements is actually based on why my statement, which is what I said. Islam is hijacked. Islam is under threat. This is what Macron says. This is what George W. Bush said. The Islam is under threat, and their war is against political Islam. They never use their war is against Islam. Their war is against political Islam. Their war is against Islamists. Their war is against Islamism. This is a very deep understanding. Muslims, I hope Muslims need to understand these things. Thank you very much, guys. I hope time is over. I wish to stay here longer.
Thank you so much, sir.
Can I ask a question, please?
Quick, I have only 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. So very happy to listen to your lecture. My question is specifically to Israel. I think that Israel is being very much vulnerable these days, because when you look at the conflict with the Palestinians, you see that Israel is forced to strike a deal with Hamas over the years. And there is growing number of resentment against Israel in the United States, which is its biggest ally. Many Jews have come out in open against Israel. And also, you can see that in the conflict with the Palestinians, you see that a number of Arabs are in conflict with the Jews in Israel. I mean, the domestic conflict. So I think both externally and internally, Israel is facing a crisis. I would like to hear your comments on that.
Thank you very much. I hope it's our last question. Young man, Israel is, yes, no doubt, Israel is now facing a two-dimension of wars. One is internal, one is external. Internal is a civil war, is through their Arab citizens. Now, these Arab citizens are not Palestinians. These Arab citizens are not people of Gaza. They are not members of Hamas or PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, supported, run by Iran. These are their own Israeli citizens, same and equal rights in the state of Israel. Now, when these people create a mischief, then Israel has a two fronts to fight. Specifically, when one front is still on the heat and second front started the war. This is what exactly happened. Hamas used Sheikh Jarrah's conflict, Temple Mount conflict. Hamas used this. When Hamas saw there are conflict between Arabs and the Jews, Hamas started rockets to send a hidden message to Arabs that you don't be afraid, we are behind you. However, Arabs, Israelis, they have many grievances, some grievances against the state of Israel. Like some Muslims in the UK, they have a grievance against the state of Israel. What grievances? Actually, there are no, the grievances actually don't exist. They have a social benefits. They have an equal opportunity. Somehow minorities face some problems everywhere. Some minority face problem in Pakistan. Some minorities face problems in India, in UK, in America, in Israel. Where are the minorities that face some sort of problems? But we have to see overall general benefits. General benefits. So Arabs have a general benefits equal to the Jewish. These people who created a mischief in the Temple Mount, these were people with related mostly with criminal organizations in Arabs. They use criminal activities. They have grievances against the state, against police. Every criminal have some sort of unjustifiable, unlawful grievances against the police and against the state. There's the same over there. Hamas is a militant organization. Yes, the only problem Israel is Hamas live among the people. When Israel target, they use their own civilians as a human shield. This is a problem. Like in Kashmir, when Indian Army attack some houses, they use in the villages as people civilians as a human shield. This is how the Palestinians, Hamas does. So yes, Israel have two problems, but I believe Israel has a capability to deal with both problems effectively because their intel system is very strong. Their cyber security system is very strong. They trace every single person easily who were involved through using their mobile phones or social networking. And they are arresting, because I had a meeting last week. I had a meeting with a former higher ranking officer of Shin Bet, Israeli intelligence agency. And these questions I asked, what do you think? So he responded accordingly, what actually happened, what's going on, and what's the future plan of Israel's, how to deal these ones. Then I had a meeting with Reserve Israeli Defense Army's Lieutenant Colonel Ayal about these issues and other issues as well. Hamas, I tell you one thing, young man, Hamas is not a big threat for Israel. The big threat in Israel is in Gaza, through the Gaza in Israel, is PIJ. Because somehow Hamas, they meet ceasefire, they meet some agreements through the Egypt or Jordan or Qatar and have some temporary ceasefire. A temporary, the last 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 7 years. Like last one was 2014 till 2021. Peace completely. It was, rockets were coming, but it was not a proper war. So Hamas is a balance. If Hamas gone, PIJ comes, then there is no balance, my friend. There is a war, there is a killings, both sides. Because PIJ is a Shia organizations, PIJ is a Iranian organizations. They only want Israeli annihilation, Israeli destruction, no middle way. So Hamas is the middle way. This is why Hamas, look, one higher, bad thing and lower bad things, isn't it? So better, lower is better than higher, because there's no good thing in there. And they escalated by Israeli election, Palestinian election, Mahmoud Abbas, after 14 years, he announced elections. But when Israel saw that Hamas is going to win West Bank, then Israel doesn't want Hamas to win in West Bank. So what happened? Mahmoud Abbas canceled the election. So when Mahmoud Abbas canceled the election, Hamas used that factor to attack rockets, because they lost indirectly, they lost territory, because they were dreaming to win the West Bank as well. So because Mahmoud Abbas canceled the election, it might be Israeli influence that if you cancel election, if you say in election, you will lose, Hamas will win in West Bank. So Hamas will then have Israel have two wars, domains of wars, one Gaza, one West Bank. So that will be a problem. So Hamas use that revenge as well by throwing the rockets. But yes, civil war started, but I can't call it civil war. Civil instability. It was the Arab Israelis. They involved first in 2000, first Intifada in 2000, second Intifada in 2000. Sorry, first was in 1993-94. Second Intifada, Arab civilians, Arab Israelis, they involved in Intifada. After that 20 years, 2020 years, now 2021, Israeli Arabs then against get used by Hamas, got used by Hamas, and did some unlawful activities. But it's controlled. Because there was a survey as well last year. The survey was asked every most of the Arabs that if you want have if there's a state, Palestine is a separate state, where would you like to live? Under the Palestinian state, under Israeli? Most of the Arab Israelis say they live under the Israelis because they have a freedom. They have no freedoms. No freedom for gays, no freedom for women, no freedom for freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Not much freedom over there. And they have a censor, they have a corruption, they have a mishandling, there's a killings, assassination, tortures, prisons, death threats, everything. Israel, they don't have any death threat in law. one Israeli killed by anyone or hundreds, there will be no death penalty for anyone. So they have a human rights. So Israeli Arabs, they want to live under the Israeli government, though they have some whether they agree with them or not, they have to live under the Israeli administration rather than a Palestinian administration. So this conflict is a temporary. Israeli administration or establishment is doing well to eliminate this conflict for the future. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, we can't take any more questions. So I'd like to invite Rushita to deliver the vote of thanks. Rushita?
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for that enriching lecture. You covered a lot of aspects and highlighted very key aspects ranging from defining terrorism to the different domains of terrorism and counterterrorism, and also looking at how Iran wields its influence in West Asia using its proxies in order to achieve its goal. This lecture has definitely helped us enhance our knowledge on the subject. And on behalf of the Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, MAHE, I would like to thank you for taking out time and engaging with us. I would also like to thank the head in charge of the department, Dr. Nandakishore sir, and the faculty for enabling this discussion. And lastly, I would like to thank the audience for joining in and actively participating in the discussion. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Give me just 1 second, please. I just forgot one thing. This is a book. This book I edited. And this book, I think you students need to read this book. Good thing for you is this book is published in Delhi, New Delhi. Which publications? Is the head of the Brigadier General Pradeep Vij. So he published this book, is edited by me. This is a devil rebirth. Devil rebirth. The terror triangle of Hezbollah, Ikhwan, and IRGC. I think if you are students of international politics, specifically Middle East, you must read this book. You can easily buy this book from New Delhi, which publications, and it'll give you increase a huge knowledge in you about this conflict. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noor. Certainly, we'll buy it for our library. We'll buy your other books too. I'm sure today it was an enriching lecture. I think a lot of them wanted to have a question session with you. I think we'll just keep one exclusive with only our first year students. I think they were very keen to ask you a lot of questions because we kept this as an open forum. I think we had 68, 69 participants, so they couldn't actually. Some other time, if at all time permits you, you should be able to help us out with that. We will have your lecture again, and many thanks to you for taking your time out and then delivering this lecture.
Always welcome. Always welcome, Doctor.
See you people. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.